From the Oklahoman newsroom, this is an OSU update. I'm Jenny Carlson here with our OSU coverage team, Nathan Ruiz, Scott Wright. Guys, it's time to talk about the spring game. OSU started their spring football later than everybody else, and they're having their spring game essentially as late as they can have it. Scott, this is really about not the guys on campus currently, which is kind of interesting because spring is all about the guys on campus. It's really about recruiting. What does OSU hope to accomplish this weekend?
Well, the big thing is it allowed them a couple of different options. Number one, it allowed them the chance to see what everybody else did on their big recruiting weekends when they're bringing guys in for visits and how they're handling that and sort of where teams are setting the bar. It also allowed them to be the last faces that all of these people see, all of these recruits see before they go into their summer, and a lot of guys are going to be making their decisions over the summer. So being that last official visit of the spring is a big deal, and it actually does help the guys on campus a little bit too, especially on the defensive side, because they got to get a few extra weeks of preparing for that Jim Knowles defense.
Yeah, by the way, not all things are about recruits when it comes to how they set the schedule. But Nathan, it is interesting when Scott talks about, how other people have done it. We saw down south in Norman that they made a huge production out of the day. And it sounds like it's a little bit different in Stillwater, but this is still a pretty important weekend for the Cowboys, for this program.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing Mike Gundy said when he was asked what they're going to be doing for the spring game was, well, we're not going to have a concert similar to what OU did with Trace Adkins. But I think it'll be pretty, by the book, by what we've seen from OSU as far as spring game goes. They'll play some football. They'll have some different activities for fans. Fans will be able to go on the field afterward and talk to their favorite players, sign autographs, so the kids will be excited about it. So I think it's an opportunity for them to show recruits, this is what it's like here. This is our everyday experience at OSU, while also giving fans an inside look at the program in a way and allowing them to connect with players. Because once you get into the season, that really doesn't happen that much. But once the spring game ends, fans will be on the field. It'll be a little bit hectic for everyone probably, but you can find your favorite players and go from there.
Scott, when it comes to recruiting, Oklahoma State last year was the first year for this early signing day. This is a chance for recruits to make official on-campus visits that weren't able to do that before. That earlier recruiting date became a boom for Oklahoma State. They essentially got their entire recruiting class locked up on that early signing day. Mike Gundy has professed his love for that early signing day. This is, again, a shift towards doing some things to make that as profitable, as beneficial for them as a program as possible. Do you get a sense like they have any number in mind? Would they like to have a certain number of recruits committed by the end of this weekend, or is that just too hard to gauge?
Yeah, I think that's a little bit tough to call. I do think that that they have some ideas of how many people, how many guys they want to get in. They've got some behind the scenes things going on that fans aren't allowed in because of recruiting restrictions. Things going on in the Sherman Smith Center that they're going to have with coaches and recruits and everybody getting involved with the families and making this a big exciting event for them. But I don't know that they've necessarily put a number on it saying we need to get this many guys committed before we shut the doors on Boone Pickens Stadium on Saturday night. I know they probably want to have a few, and they want to make a really strong impression with a few others. We'll see what happens, and it's just starting to trickle out. Some guys who are saying that, oh yeah, I'm going to be there, tweeting out when they're going to be in Stillwater. So some big name recruits, some big name in-state guys like Colin Clay from Putnam City, who's on the list to be there, and some other guys as well. So Oklahoma State has a chance to really make an impression with this and take advantage of this in the way that they want to set themselves up for that December signing period.
All right, so we've talked all about guys who may or may not be Cowboys. Let's talk about a few that actually are. Nathan, let's start with this. Spring game, Mike Gundy has said there's going to be about 20 to 25 minutes of really good football.
Yes.
I hope he maybe throws up a sign or something and says, this is when the really good football starts. But as people are watching on Saturday, offensive side of the ball, who's a player you think people should be watching on the offensive side of the ball?
Well, I think, obviously it starts with the quarterbacks, with Taylor Cornelius and Keandre Woodie kind of competing throughout the fall. It seems that Cornelius, is in the lead in that competition. Gundy has said so, but it's hard to gauge that competition just given that half the guys competing aren't there, with a graduate transfer from Hawaii, Drew Brown, and high school product, Spencer Sanders. So I think that the areas to watch are kind of where there are other areas that are replenishing, one of which being wide receivers. So a guy I'll pick out is Tyron Johnson. Could be OSU's biggest receiver this year. Just when you look at them losing James Washington, Marcel Aitman, Chris Lacey, obviously Jalen McCleskey and Dylan Sterner will play a role in that as well. But he's a guy who came in with really high expectations and was just kind of in that wide receiver mix. But this is a year that he can really break out, I think.
What about it for you, Scotty? Who are you going to be watching on the offensive side of the ball?
Tyron Johnson is really going to be interesting to watch because he was such a buzz. There was so much buzz about him last spring. But I'm going to go with Chuba Hubbard. This is a guy that another one that maybe we don't see him a ton in the fall, but down the line we're going to see more and more of this guy. We've heard about how fast he is. We've heard about how much he's bulked up during his redshirt year. It's time for us to get a look. We're not going to see a ton of Justice Hill. That's just the case, and that's how it's going to be for now, because there's no need to run him out there and get him extra hits that he doesn't need. We're going to see J.D. King. We're going to see L.D. Brown, and we're going to get to see Chuba Hubbard. And it's a lot of fans, I think, are anticipating what this guy is going to look like. We don't get in the spring practices to see, but I got to watch some last August when he was before he had bulked up, and he was making some plays then, and they really considered not redshirting him last year. So I think that you're going to see him make some plays and wow the crowd. Now, obviously, that running back depth chart is really deep. So we get to August, it might not be a great situation for him to get on the field a ton, but I think he could be really fun to watch on Saturday.
And by the way, Hubbard and a few other guys on this roster give us a chance to expand our Canada geography knowledge. We did this before we started. All 3 Cowboys from Canada, all from Alberta, essentially straight north of Montana, Idaho. Interesting stuff. Anyway, what about defensive side of the ball? I mean, this is obviously a brand new situation. Scott, you mentioned the later start time, guys getting adjusted to Jim Knowles, the new defensive coordinator. First time without Glenn Spencer in a really long time are the Cowboys. Is there a guy on the defensive side of the ball you'll be watching?
This guy isn't a starter, but I think he's going to be really intriguing to watch. That's Kevin Henry at linebacker, a guy that tore his ACL, was primed for what looked to be a really good season last year. He was still in a backup role at that time, but a guy that they were rotating in a lot to help out at linebacker. He's bulked up since then. He tore his ACL right before that South Alabama game. He's back to not quite 100%, but he's fully cleared and ready to go. I think that he's a guy that can play both linebacker positions in Jim Knowles' new defense. He can back up Justin Phillips at the middle linebacker. He can back up Calvin Bundage at the outside linebacker. He has speed, size at about 240 pounds. So he's going to be a really fun guy to keep an eye on, I think, because I think they're going to find some really creative ways to get him involved, get him on the field. What
about your view of the defensive side of the ball, Nathan? Who are you going to be looking out for?
I think it's Kenneth Edison-Magruder, a former linebacker who's moved to safety in that 4-2-5 defensive scheme that Jim Knowles will bring to OSU. You look at it, OSU lost its 2 primary starting safeties from last year in Ramon Richards and Trey Flowers, one of which who could get drafted sometime this weekend in Flowers. But for Edison-Magruder, he's a guy who I think is liking that ability to be a little more smooth out there, run around a little bit. Obviously, I'm sure he enjoyed being a linebacker, but being back in more natural position of safety for him, I think he could do him a lot of good. I think it'll do OSU's defense a lot of good. It'll be interesting just to watch the defensive scheme as a whole and see how it goes, given that, Gundy made this move for a reason. He obviously felt that they needed some kind of a change, and this will be a fan's first chance, our first chance to really see it in action.
One interesting thing about that is last year, Glenn Spencer really wanted to try to find as many ways as he could to get Edison-Magruder and Bundage on the field at the same time, and this defense opens that up. And down the line, I think we're really going to see the benefit of that.
Guys, lastly, let's talk about stuff to prove. I mean, spring games can be a little bit squishy on just the importance. I mean, they've practiced all spring, so what we see in one of those practices, which is essentially what a spring game is anybody's guess. But who do you feel like has the most to prove? Nathan, we'll start with you. Coach, player, doesn't matter. Who do you feel like might have the most to prove in this spring game situation?
I think Taylor Cornelius, just because he'll be in that spotlight. You'll see him out there. It's a situation where Gundy has talked him up throughout the spring, but no one's really been able to see him in action and see what he's doing out there. Obviously, he'll head into the summer as OSU's #1 guy, but like I said before, 2 more guys are coming to campus at some point, and so the competition won't get any easier. So this is an opportunity for him to go out there and make a big statement heading into the summer. Keandre Woodsy's kind of in a similar situation with maybe fighting for the backup quarterback spot. So I think both those quarterbacks have something to prove, especially Taylor Cornelius, who seems to be in the prime spot right now to be OSU's starter in their opener.
Yeah, I think under the lights it'll be interesting to see with the pressure what Taylor Cornelius does, even though it is just one of 15 spring practices. Scotty, who you think has the most to prove out there?
You know, I look at the offensive line and I see a lot of guys up there that have a lot to prove. One of them being, well, let's start with whoever it is at tackle. We got a lot of guys out there that are at both tackle positions that are going to be in some serious competition. Dylan Galloway is out with after shoulder surgery. Those guys are going to be competing for a starting job all the way through August. But the guy that I'm really curious about right now is Shane Richards. He's moved from right tackle into right guard. Now we got the news that last week that Larry Williams is likely going to get his 6th year of eligibility and would most likely fall back into that spot. Shane Richards, if he wants to get on the field now as a 5th-year senior, he's going to have to beat somebody out, whether it's Larry Williams at right guard or move back to tackle and beat out, say, Tevin Jenkins at the right tackle spot. So Shane Richards is a guy who really, to find out if that redshirt year last year was worth it, he's got to do some things to prove that he deserves to be on the field right now.
A guy that I don't think fits in the category of a lot to prove, but I'm interested to see is Jelani Woods. Quarterback, now transitioned over to the Cowboy back. I know that's a position that doesn't get a lot of attention, but is really important in the blocking schemes. You know, we've seen that with, you talk about offensive line. I think that's going to be interesting. He's still extremely big, 6'7", 251. How he fits in that, I think, is going to be really interesting. So I think that'll, is he out there maybe with a run of guys that you could see him playing with in the fall? That'll be really interesting. Guys, lastly, Nathan, you mentioned people get to get on the field. This is a free event. People can go 1 o'clock kick time. Scott, I anticipate that it's a nice day. It's projected to be a good weather. A lot of people come out. You know, this is a pretty fan-friendly event, has been in the past at least. That's something I know a lot of people look forward to, is getting a chance to take pictures with players, coaches, those sorts of things. A lot going on for fans on Saturday. Yeah,
absolutely. And Mike Gundy understands that. He basically says this is a lot more about, he called it the sideshow, but more about the sideshow than the football. But that's really what it is. This is a fan event. They want people to come out there. They want people to be there, so that the recruits see how important this is, how important this program is to the fans. That's the most important thing to them this weekend. Yeah, they'll get on the field and put on their 25 minutes of good football and give the fans a little bit of a show with that. But it's more about connecting with the program, having some fun, getting some food at a food truck and letting the kids jump on a giant inflatable, whatever it might be, a castle or whatever. So, that's what it's really about.
Did we get to jump on any inflatables? Could we go a little early?
No shoes allowed.
I'll take off my shoes. Don't worry. I'm happy to do it. All right, 1 o'clock. If you're looking for the football, that's when it starts on Saturday up at OSU. As Scott mentioned, Nathan mentioned, a lot going on around the event, so be sure to stay with us. We'll have all those details leading up to the spring game on Saturday. Be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.